Hello. It's been a minute, but that's okay. I've got here a little bit of Gradius for the NES. For some of you who have played this game before might notice it looks a little bit different, and the reason for that is that this is the Gradius Arrangement Chronicle Death ROM hack, which changes up a few of the graphics and a few of other gameplay things to make it a little bit more like the arcade version. It's just a bunch of quality of life stuff, basically. Changes up the laser, the little option spheres that follow your ship around. You can get 4 of them now, whereas in the original NES version you can only get 2. Stuff like that. You know, a couple of sprites in the backgrounds and things like that have been updated. It's very nice. Getting into the first level here, this is the iconic volcano stage, and this is a level that we'll be seeing a lot if I choose to play some of the future Gradius games on this channel here. And in fact, it's so iconic that this game decided to give the game 2 volcano stages. So I'll be seeing that. This is the theme for the first level and the 4th level. They couldn't make up their minds on what level 4 should be, so they're just like, fuck it, we're gonna make another volcano stage. Why not? But looks like we've made it through the first level here. I almost got ambushed by that turret, but we're good. And coming up on our first boss encounter here, there's a total of 3 bosses in Gradius 1, although I would hesitate to really call any of them bosses. The first one here coming up is the Big Core Mark 1. He appears in the first 5 levels of this game, and he isn't exactly much of a threat. It's kind of all he does. It's going to open up in a second, and he's probably going to die in like 2 hits. There we go. But there we go. Okay, he's dead. Took a little bit there, but we're good. We're good. And the other 2 bosses don't fare much better, especially since the final boss is completely defenseless. Yeah, it wasn't. The Gradius bosses didn't get all that creative until later in the series, unfortunately. Coming up on a little bit of a fortress type level here, a bunch of floating islands with like turrets and things like that. This does introduce one iconic thing at the end of the level, which you will see. Doesn't seem iconic at the time, but trust me, it is iconic. A lot of things in Gradius are iconic because Konami really likes recycling ideas for their Gradius game. Oh, I could have gotten all those. I'm just gonna get a shield here. Here's the other iconic thing, the Zub Rush. These little spawning enemies here, they're called Zubs. And basically, in later games, the Zub Rush essentially signals the beginning of a boss rush, where like multiple bosses come at you one at a time, and you have to fight your way through. And the original Gradius boss theme plays, which is kind of repetitive, but I don't know. I always kind of imagined it as like the ship's like alarm system going off. And that was kind of the reason why it was so repetitive and why it was a bunch of like high-pitched sounding notes, but there we are. Aha, and here we are at the stage. This stage is very amusing because it's the stage, and who doesn't love it? Who doesn't love a good Hey, there's Big Core again. There he is. Hello, sir. You're just as much of a non-threat as you were the last couple times I fought you. There you go, you're dead. And we're moving on. Ah, and here we are at the 2nd volcano stage. And it's really just kind of, it's essentially just a carbon copy of the first stage with more enemies and more shit flying at you from all over the screen. These little turrets like to, like that. That guy totally might have gotten me. I almost crashed into the train there. Jesus Christ. But yeah, those turrets just love to run on screen while you're busy, killing a bunch of enemies in front of you and just ruining your day. Okay, coming to the end of level 4 here. This is probably one of the more boring pre-boss encounters because it's just these things. They just kind of do this, and they just kind of fly directly into your lasers and die without you having really to put in any effort. But it's kind of a trend also with a few Gradius things where you just kind of have to pick a spot on the screen that's safe and just spam from there, and the difficulty mostly just comes from finding that one safe spot on the screen. I know like the gunwall boss from Gradius 2 is like that. There's a few others where you just kind of have to pick a safe spot. This is the most boring level in the game because it's literally just fighting a bunch of these weird cell-looking things, which we'll see later in Gradius 3. And yeah, you just kind of have to dodge around the projectiles and kill them as quickly as you can. On the original NES version of this game, without the ROM hack, it's a little bit more treacherous just because your lasers can't do nearly as much damage, so you can't really kill these things very fast. So you just kind of have to dodge, but luckily the game slows way down because of the amount of sprites that are on screen. So dodging becomes a little bit easier. It's kind of like Gradius 3 for the SNES in that sense, where dodging becomes easier because of the slowdown. But we will actually be playing the SA1 patched version of Gradius 3 for the SNES, so I will have no such luxury when we play it, unfortunately. And guess what? The boss encounter is literally just fighting more of these things. This is really the best they could do, huh? And the arcade version isn't any different either, it's just they have more arms. That's like the only difference in the arcade version. But I guess it is the first Gradius game, so you gotta cut it a little bit of slack. There he is again. This will actually be the last time we see Big Cormorant 1. He will be missed. But yeah, the next level is a completely different boss. It's an original boss, finally! We had something new! And here it is. This is probably one of the more interesting levels in the game. And see those tentacles that make up the floor and the ceiling? Once we get to the boss, you'll actually see that those tentacles are actually attached to the boss. You're essentially playing through the entire boss's like body, essentially, which is kind of a cool aesthetic. It's a very interesting environment, and while later games would build off of that, this is kind of it's a very original and unique idea, and I appreciate it. Unfortunately, the boss is not nearly as interesting. Here he is, actually, coming right up through this, wacky-looking tentacle hallway. There he is. Look at him.
Wow!
So intimidating, so unique, so original, and he's dead. He's gone. That's it. That's the whole thing. Alright, and moving on to the final stage, and what we're gonna do for the final stage, get this. So you see that little double shot there, that lonely little double shot that we haven't been using the entire game because it's worthless? Well, we're gonna switch to it now, because the final stage is an absolute claustrophobic mess. Where there's a bunch of turrets on the floor and the ceiling, and it's super narrow and hard to, navigate without crashing into the terrain. So the best thing to do is just have your shots be as spread apart as possible, so that you can just hit as many things as you can before they hit you. And that just basically becomes the strat for like the final stage in most other Gradius titles as well. You'll see me switching to the double shot whenever we get to like the final couple of stages, usually. Gotta go up to the ceiling here, because that thing comes along. And I'm sure that will be a very difficult obstacle that I'm sure the devs spent a very long time programming and putting together. Unfortunately, it's useless because it doesn't reach all the way down to the floor. So it's just kind of here. And you just kind of go around it. I suppose this is sort of a precursor to like the crab mini-bosses that you see in the final stages of later Gradius games, which you'll see, and those are kind of interesting. And we got the final door here. Gotta come through. Oh, we lost our shield. Oh no! Whatever shall we do against the final boss of the game? It's this giant brain hooked up to wires. And yeah, it's completely defenseless. Just shoot these things here. And it's dead. And we get to zoom out view. The fortress exploding. This very glitchy view because I guess the ROM hack just like messes with it or something, and then the game completely loops. This is just a second loop of the game, and it makes everything more difficult, basically. And that's sort of one of the other gimmicks of Gradius games, is that the game will just continuously loop, and the game will become even more difficult as you go along. And I'm just doing horribly. So, just going to pause there. I'll be back with Gradius 2, hopefully, in a little bit. That'll be a lot of fun. Gradius 2 for the NES is probably my favorite Gradius game. It is very, very, very good. Music is a banger, and the game looks fantastic. Really cool environments. So I look forward to doing that. Thank you so much. See you later.